Gundam.tk presents Gundam Alex. Hey everybody, Robert184 and welcome back to my review of the Gundam RX-78NT1 Alex. Don't forget to check out part 1 to see all of the parts. With this Gundam, there's nothing particularly interesting about the plates. It comes with a couple of yellow ones, and I did like this though, that they give you two V antennas because this one has the blue jewel built into it. But with this one, you're able to put on the yellow one and just put on the blue jewel. But this one would be if you were going to paint it. Some of the strange parts is this huge gray part for the armor has, I think, two red parts, a single black part for the waist, and the clear part for the eyes. So it seems a little bit strange that that's not on the A plate. And what I really noticed was that I had this awful sprue where the parts were half torn off on one side because it just looked like it was either poorly made or it's just been sitting around for a long time. For dry decals that you can put on, you get a fair number, including the EFSF and the UNT Spacey if you choose to go with that, as it's labeled on the box art. But you also get a whole bunch of seals, especially these orange ones are supposed to be put on in a lot of prominent places, including on the shield, but that's something I'll decide a little bit later. Putting the Alex together is as simple as putting the feet on, the legs on, and you already saw in part 1 how the shoulder gets attached. And when all is said and done, here is the RX-78NT1. Some thoughts as I spin this around. I think the first thing that I noticed is how blue this guy is, and despite the fact that he only has one plate of blue parts, I think they really go to good use because the legs really stand out and the yellow and blue work really well. That although the original Gundam is awesome just because it's the original Gundam, I think this has a more modern design and I think it looks a little bit sharper overall. As mentioned before in part 1, this really has limited mobility, so the legs can go back, and coming forward, the front skirt doesn't get in the way, so you can have them kicking forward, and the knee will bend down. But the ankles really have fairly limited mobility, especially forward and back. As far as the arms go, you're able to move them, but overall with this model, there's a very clicky feeling, and that's not really the right word for it, but things don't want to move smoothly, especially compared to any of the newer master grades. For the flat foot test, you are able to slide it out about to there before the ankles are not able to stay flat on the ground. Front to back, I don't think it's going to be very close. But, yeah, it's starting to pull up there. As for the side to side with the legs, they're only able to go up this far, and it's not the side armor that's getting in the way, shape, or form. It's just the way that the leg mechanism works. Hardly any mobility. From the anime, the pose that I really wanted to recreate though was the Gatling guns out, and because the arm mobility is not that bad, you're able to bring this up, spin the wrist all the way over, in this case, open up the Gatling gun, and still have it sticking up parallel to the arm, not actually shooting in. So overall, not too bad. Usually when I'm reviewing, you can always find enough poses to copy from the manual, but in this case you've got the Gatling gun pose, put the beam saber in, put the beam rifle in, have the hand up, and yeah, really, that's about it, and they don't have any other ideas on how to pose this thing well either. For size comparison, I thought I would show you another Gundam that was retconned into continuity, the GP01. And this is also an older kit, and you can really see that the plastics are different colors. This is much more of a little bit of a gray, even a tiny bit of green in it, you could say, whereas this one really stands out with bright, bright white. Keeping with the OVA theme, here is the Alex next to the massive GP02A. And why don't you check out its review on gundam.tk. And for no reason at all, here's the Alex next to Gundam X. And I think that you have to laugh a little bit at the differences in their weapons power. This wouldn't be a size comparison though, if the Alex wasn't being compared to the Gundam that it was meant to replace, the original granddaddy. In terms of weaponizing the Alex, when you take the shield you open up the hand, slip that in, and then you're supposed to bring this up and over the blue part where you'll get a bit of a snap as it goes into place. There's no locking mechanism to keep the beam rifle in place other than the trigger finger, and I have to say it stays in place pretty well, but it of course doesn't stack up to what they have on the new Master Grades. Fully armed, here is the Alex, with beam rifle, Gatling guns closed, shield on, and the beam sabers tucked into the back. And I have to say that because of the bulk of the shield, it does look fairly impressive, and the beam rifle doesn't look as plain once it's in his arm. The beam sabers don't fit properly into the hand because there's no way to actually clasp them in there besides just pinching them in, but they do look okay as part of the overall package. And now that he's armed, for a size comparison, I still can't even get them in the same shot. And there is what should have been Amuro's final suit at the end of the 1 Year War, and his final suit in the movie Char's Counterattack. Here's a look at the Alex with part of his armor on, and I'll show you how the rest goes on, because it's actually not all that easy. When you're putting on the leg armor, you start with the front and back piece, and basically they have two holes which you're going to attach a polycap variation onto. Basically slide that in, and then because it has a slit on it, you're going to put the side parts on. But the overall result once you do that is leg armor that, well, it looks okay, it's loose and it doesn't really fit in particularly well. For the arms, really simply, you're going to put this gray piece on, and you'll notice here that it has these small gray parts that you put on, and when you're putting on the rest of the arms, they have holes. And this works a little bit better than the legs, but it still feels a little bit loose and not quite locked into place. One complaint about the arms is this is probably the worst attachment I've ever seen on a Master Grade Gundam, but these parts are going to fit into the circles on this armor here. But if you look here, these parts are incredibly small, and these stick out all of about 1 or 2 millimeters, so you don't really have a lot to work with. That should have been done a lot better. The shoulder is really the best part for putting on the armor. You put on a top piece that has a notch there so it locks in above that, and then you just put on this part, and then put on the front and back. And you're left with something that's actually very solid. The rear armor skirt is 3 pieces put together, and you just slide that on. And then there's one big piece on the back, and you put these parts on the side, and it still allows you to take the beam sabers on and off. Nothing fancy about the front armor, you just lock that into place, and the top of the chest armor has 2 things here that you're just going to attach onto the rear armor. When all is said and done, you have a very, very bulked up Alex. Although you'll notice that on the side of the skirt armor, maybe they could have put something on there just to give it a little bit more consistency. As much as he's bulked up though, he still really can't touch the overall size of the GP02A. Overall, I think that the armor looks better than I expected it to, and you can still really get the idea that it's a Gundam underneath, just a big powered up version of it. But then again, it's not that easy to put on and off, and I think it's the kind of thing that after I've shown this to you, I think I'm going to take that armor off and probably not do it again. Hey, you want to go play football? I don't know. I'm more of a rugby guy. Maybe go ask Chibode. Some final thoughts on the Alex. I have to say that because this was a 99, this is one of the Master Grades that I've put off building for a long time. Even though I like the series and I like its design overall, it was just something about it, it seemed too white, and the blue, although it looks pretty good, it doesn't come across as good on the box as it does once you actually start to build it. So I'm pleasantly surprised overall with the way it looks. It is going to take a lot of lining, especially in the head, and you're never going to get it quite to look as good as they do on the box. The shield and the beam rifle do add a lot of size, and the armor, well, it's probably something that you're only going to see in the review, and I don't think I'll use it again, because I think it looks just that much better. However, as a retcon suit, I think it's pretty cool, and it does deserve a place in 1 Year War history. Now, you've already seen that it's lacking in posability in a lot of places, but some of the other features, I have to say, I was really curious how this rubber piping would work in the shoulders, and I think it came across pretty well. So, despite the fact it's a 99, I do have to keep that in consideration, and I have to say that I'm happier with this model than I expected to be, and I think if you built it, you'd be pleasantly surprised too. Thanks for watching, everybody, and if you haven't seen the anime yet, War in the Pocket, I highly recommend it. It's very different from a regular Gundam series, but I think the results are still pretty cool all the same. Anyway, as always, Robert184, gundam.tk. You know, I'm a little biased, of course, but I'd still stick with him.